It's Aaron, and today we're going to talk a little bit about cancel culture because it seems to have crept its ugly little head back out from underneath the rock that it's been hiding under and entered back into the discourse. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, but before we do, I just want to extend a massive thank you to every single person in my community, in my audience, for showing me such unbelievable support over the last couple of days. Your generosity is honestly heartwarming, and it brought a tear to my eye. I really do appreciate that, and I really, from the bottom of my heart, thank every single one of you for being there. This was an example of how mutual aid works. This is exactly what I'm talking about when I say that we need to come together and we need to show support and camaraderie and solidarity with one another. And I really do appreciate every single person that was out there, not only donating to my Patreon, which, holy crap, that really helped, but also came in and showed me such overwhelming support and love and affection and everything like that in the comment section and in personal messages and stuff like that. So I really do appreciate all of that. Thank you, every single one of you out there, for being there and for showing that support and solidarity, comrades. I really do appreciate that. So today we're going to talk a little bit about cancel culture. Now, cancel culture, the reason why I'm talking about this today is because it got brought into the discourse by another YouTuber named Suck My Opinion, or SMO. And they released a number of tweets that got a number of larger YouTubers involved into kind of a bit of a Twitter war. It started off fairly decent with I would say good faith arguments. And as Twitter is probably the worst place on the face of the earth, the seventh level of hell, it quickly devolved into arguments, harassment, bullying, and a lot of bullshit that just wasn't necessary. So that definitely wasn't fun, but I definitely didn't expect anything else from Twitter because that's what it's there for. But one thing that stuck out to me that SMO brought up was one of their tweets that went something like this, and I wrote it down. We should tell our audience that cancel culture as a threat is completely silly. Rich people are to blame, not wokeness on Twitter. Let's punch up instead of punching down. Now, that makes a whole lot of sense viscerally. That makes a lot of sense to people if they just heard that sentence and they didn't put a lot of critical thinking into it. And that's what I'm going to do a little bit right now. Of course, I eventually do want to have a discussion with Suck My Opinion on this, even though we've had a debate in the past about cancel culture. I think that it would be fruitful for us to have possibly another one. But I don't want it to be a debate. Like I've said many times in the past, even though I call some of the things I do debates, they are just conversations, because that's the real way to get any sort of information out of a subject, is to have an actual conversation with a person and not try to debate them, because usually that's just going to result in galvanizing your audience. Obviously, there are some examples where that is not necessarily the case, but for the most part, debates end up doing that. So I would definitely like to talk to Suck My Opinion about this, but one of the main problems that I have with the tweet that they released was that it kind of institutes a false dichotomy. It kind of sets it up so it's either we need to pay attention to cancel culture, or we need to fight against the rich people, or I would say the system that has propped the elites up into positions of power. We need to fight that instead of fighting the people that are at the bottom that are getting into arguments with one another on Twitter. I guess that kind of makes sense right off the bat, but if you think about it, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because if we're only paying attention to the people that are at the top, then we're not actually paying attention to the solidarity and camaraderie and unity that we need to be paying attention to within our own community down at the bottom. We can do both things. Like I said, it's a false dichotomy to think that we should only pay attention to one thing or the other. To give an analogy, it's a lot like saying that we should only pay attention to gun crime, even though Climate change is happening. We can pay attention to both things, and we should. They aren't mutually exclusive to one another, and we need to tackle all of those problems if we're ever going to see any kind of real solution. So saying that we should only pay attention to attacking the system and not pay attention to forming groups and getting together, unifying, creating camaraderie and unity and that sort of thing really misses the point, I think, of this whole debate. And it brings up a lot of whataboutisms, or at least SMO brings up a lot of whataboutisms when they were talking about this within the Twitter discourse. They were saying that, well, there's maybe cancel culture exists, though they were denying that it even exists in the first place. But if it does exist, then it's not something that we need to pay attention to. We need to be paying attention to the elites, or we need to be paying attention to racism, or we need to be paying attention to sexism and that sort of thing. And those are just whataboutisms. It's like, yeah, okay, sure, cancel culture exists, but what about the whales? What about nukes? What about any other thing? And that's not a fair argument to have, because like right away, all off the bat, you're immediately saying that cancel culture doesn't matter because we have more important problems to be paying attention to. We need to be paying attention to all the problems. We need to be fixing the problems as they come. And not paying attention to certain problems just means that we're going to set ourselves up to fail in the future. We can pay attention to all those things. And that's the wonderful thing about having autonomous groups that are able to attack certain specific problems, right? We aren't a vanguard, or at least I don't promote having a vanguard. I promote having fully autonomous groups being able to handle different situations, different problems, because that way, the people that are most interested in those problems will be the ones that are handling them. So if there's a lot of people out there that really, really care a lot about the environment, then they're going to be tackling that problem. If there's a lot of people out there that really, really care about gun control, God help us, then they're going to be tackling that problem. If there's a lot of people out there that are really, really interested in tackling the problem with the systemic racism that exists within our society, then they'll attack that problem too. It doesn't mean that we have to take every single person in the leftist community and say, you know what? Here we go. This is the one topic that we're going to actually be focusing on. We're not going to focus on anything else until we address this thing. That's not how that works. We can't do that. That's not even a way to solve the problem. That's just another way to create a system where we're telling everybody in our audience to do a certain thing, whether or not they care about it regardless. I'm not interested in doing that. I want people to get out there. I want people to get active. I want people to get invested and involved. And if you feel as though the thing that we should be talking about more is the systemic problems within society, then talk about that, absolutely. But if you are a victim of cancel culture, or you know somebody that is, or you can explain what cancel culture is, and it's important to you and you're passionate about it, then that's something that you should be talking about as well. We shouldn't be creating this false dichotomy. It doesn't make any sense to be doing that. Another major problem here is that we're not really focusing on the same thing, right? When we're talking about cancel culture, you have a completely different definition, if I'm talking to Suck My Opinion, or anybody else out there that believes that cancel culture isn't a thing or isn't that bad. We're talking about a completely different definition than the definition of cancel culture that I've been using basically this entire time. So we're talking past each other. We're not even talking about the same thing. So if you want to say, oh, well, cancel culture doesn't exist because people aren't kicked out of the left, okay, great. Then if that's your definition of cancel culture, kicking people out of the left, then no, you're right. It doesn't exist. You can't kick people out of having an ideology. You can't kick people out of believing something that they already in their heart believe in. It doesn't work that way. Leftism isn't necessarily a club, right? It's not a social group, though some people like to think that it is. It's an ideology. And in practice, it's basically a set of political beliefs that we are trying to strive for. It's not something that you can necessarily kick somebody out of. I guess you can kick somebody out of leftist groups, but you can't kick somebody out of being a leftist. It doesn't really make any sense. But what you can do is you can discredit, disrupt, harass, abuse, and bully those people into either believing the way that you do or into not even being on that platform at all. And this creates all sorts of other problems. Not only does it destroy the confidence and the mental capacity of the person that you are attacking, but it also discredits them to the rest of the community. It makes them unpalatable to the rest of that group. So now that person no longer has the ability to say the things that they want to say because they might feel as though they're going to be attacked because they haven't been perpetually correct. It creates a situation where people that have never even seen that individual's content or have never even talked to that individual or had any intergagement or engagement with that person, they immediately have this opinion of them without actually even knowing who they are. And that's a massive problem because then those people, without even having a chance, are automatically being considered untrustworthy, not useful, probably somebody that's problematic or toxic to the community. And that doesn't help us. That hurts us. We're getting these secondhand opinions which are pushing people away. Like I said before, cancel culture isn't about kicking people out of the left. It's about pushing new people away. And it's about bullying and harassing and abusing people into submission. That's what this thing is about. That's what cancel culture ostensibly does. And if you aren't affected by that, or you think that something else is more important, great. Then definitely talk about something else. But there are people out there that are affected by this all of the time. And I don't think that it's helpful that we have this discussion while we're just talking past each other all of the time about the same situation without actually coming to a real agreement on even what we're talking about. So that's where I'm going to leave it with you guys. What is your definition of cancel culture, if you're to give one? And if you are to give one, please let me know. Are you in favor of it? Are you against it? What is your opinion on it in general? And I'd love to hear everybody's explanations down in the comment section down below. And so thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And thank you all again for, like I said, the outpouring of support from my video yesterday. If you want to check that video out, please check that out as well. Link in the description box below and further back in this video series. And thanks for watching.